Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to Shadow and Sun Show. Sorry about that. I thought we were playing Star Wars for a second. No, it's just the songs were in the wrong order. So, how's everybody doing? Welcome to Cimmerian September. Welcome to Cimmerian Saturday. Welcome to an hour or two of talking about our favorite barbarian and the man who brought him to life, brought us so much great sword and sorcery fiction, so much fun, so many great stories, a bunch of great games. Tonight we're going to talk a little bit about what we love most about Robert E. Howard's work. I am a little partial to his Cull stories and his Solomon Kane stories, but uh, they all pale kind of to the breadth of work that is Conan, all the great Marvel magazines and comic books. So much great stuff. I'll have a couple of people joining us in just a moment, but I wanted to set the stage, as it were, for what we're going to talk about tonight. Although, if you've watched this show for any length of time, we will divulge into talking about other things, and who knows where that might lead. But I have found a newfound respect for Robert E. Howard's work, reading the original uh, Gnome publishing books, the original, not the Strange Tales and the Weird Fantasy pulp magazines. I can't really get those except on PDF, and you guys know I almost never read PDFs. I'm always doing other things with my devices, usually listening to music or listening to something else while I'm reading. So it just doesn't work. But the Gnome Press books were a real eye opener to getting a better feel for Robert's work. It's obviously a tragedy that he left us so early, obviously before most of us were born. But had he stuck around for a little while longer, God only knows what we would have gotten from him in the way of Conan stories and maybe more Solomon Kane and definitely more Cull and more Conan MacArt. Oh God, I can't remember his name. I had a long day today. I've been on my feet since about 8:30 this morning, just walking and running and doing all kinds of stuff. So how you guys doing? Have you guys read any Conan this month? Have you looked into it? Have you pulled out any of those books, those comic books, those I would say movies, but I'm not a fan of either of them. Oh, it's in the usual place, Owen, in the Discord at the top of my Discord server, the link channel. Owen's going to come and join us and talk about Conan, and I'm not sure who else, but they all know where the link is, and uh, I'm usually welcoming to most of those people who are in my Discord. Let me know if you can find it, Omen. If you can't, what are you doing with your life? So I also had a really good Savage Sword game last night, which is a role playing game by the Red Room, and that's probably him right now, bleeping at the door. It is in fact Omen. How you
All
doing?
right. So I'm doing okay. I did my exercises, so I'm doing pretty well.
Yeah, I probably walked about 5 miles today in the scorching heat.
I need to do that. I think I'm going to do some farmer's walks probably tomorrow morning. I'll just grab a kettlebell and walk around my apartment complex one way, and then when that arm gets tired, swap to the other arm and walk my way back.
Yeah, I was just grocery shopping and shopping for other junk, and you
I
know,
need to do that. No, I mean, you talk about the Conan stuff, and we were talking about that last night about, he wasn't that great writer. a lot of it is someone's great, someone's writing, but what I did notice was an efficiency of words. So certain writers, I don't think do a good job of painting the scene. Robert Heinlein being a good example. Um, no, I mean Robert Heinlein. I love his books, but
Hmm.
he is more of an intellectual rather than trying to do a visual aspect. And
Hmm.
then you get someone like not McCaffrey, Anne Rice. Anne Rice likes to just go on and on about the visuals and like, can we get on with the plot? And I think that Howard, especially since you're talking about the writing, early on you can tell he's trying to find his way through. As he
Hmm.
gets by the later stories that he was writing, you can really feel that he's starting to get in stride. He knows what the audience is looking for. He knows how to do it both visually and viscerally, which is something that oh not Howard.
Burroughs.
No, well, Burroughs did a very good job for that too. And Burroughs was well. You want to talk about some of the pumped out books left and right? I mean, he wrote what, like 70 or 80 books at least,
Hmm.
and
And half of them were Tarzan. Just
well,
saying,
26 of them were Tarzan. 13 of them were it was, but they were all somewhat
sure.
popular. I love the Tarzan books. I read probably 21 of the 26, if not more.
Really, I have not gotten that far with Tarzan. I did love. I still think I like Burroughs better in some ways. Uh,
But to be fair,
Howard,
Burroughs had an extra like 20 years on Howard.
right, right. Whereas
I
Howard had
mean,
barely had a little over 10. He got started really young, whereas Burroughs did a lot of regular work before he decided to throw his hat into the ring, so to speak. And Howard, I'm amazed at some of the early stories. I was talking about it earlier this week. 40 pages, and he's gone through two and a half different countries and done a whole bunch of junk. A whole bunch of different fun things, and still managed to describe things well enough to where you get a really good feel for it. And his combat is always top notch.
well, I
After
think that he tried practicing doing some of the stuff,
right,
and it was H.P. Lovecraft who I was referring to. H.P. Lovecraft was really good at efficiency of words. You
you think
know,
so?
oh, my favorite line of H.P. Lovecraft: he was nibbling on his head like a candy cane. I mean, you got nowadays everyone wants to describe everything. I'm like, okay, that's so much more horrific because I'm filling in all the details. But that's
True.
what I mean by some of the efficiency of words. Yeah, he was a bit verbose in certain areas, but you
Yeah, yeah.
know,
That was that's something that Lovecraft is kind of famous for, is kind of droning on a little bit too much about the
how he felt.
atmosphere,
Yeah, well,
yeah,
that's true.
as opposed to the actual details. More about the feeling, which made me think that he was like a really kind of paranoid, timid, frightened guy, and putting it all down, and hoping that we felt the same way. Whereas with Howard, we're just looking at this just this perfect human in you know almost every way. Rarely ever making a mistake. The mistake were always, or the mistakes were always trusting the wrong person, which is pretty rare, unless it's a woman who backstabs him, or turns on him at the last minute, which they always do, in a way.
Conan Conan made his mistakes before and after the stories, so he cuts in as he was going through.
True, true. How
If you
many
look at
stories? How many stories? I mean, only in a third, excuse me, of the gnome books, where he's already lost the war, and now he's the sole survivor. And I'm just like, I'd really like to read those stories as well, because when he's done what was the last story I read where uh, in India, where they were fighting a war, or a witch shall be born. I think that was the one
yeah,
where he's really got the strategy and the tactics, and and the feel of being on the battlefield, having never actually been on one.
But I think some of it was is he was still trying to feel his way through, and I think that people forget during that era for the weird tales and things. I was listening to Brandon Sanderson talk about sci-fi, which the history of sci-fi, which was very. I like learning like some of the backgrounds for it, but those were pulp. Those
Cheers,
weren't
bro.
your highbrow reading. That's why the soft covers were that way. They were put on. They call them pulp because the paper was cheap. They
Hmm.
didn't put them on the great paper. The idea is that when you had weird tales, they had a bunch of short stories, and then they would have like 30 or 40 pages of the main writer for the weird tales. That was the way they would
Squirrel,
do
if
it.
you want to join us, you know where the link is. It's in the channel in my Discord that says live stream links at the very top. You want to come on
So
in?
so when you start looking at that is and then they and of course when you look at Burroughs, he was very good at doing those episodic. Like his first three Martian books. If you
Yeah,
look at him, every chapter was a new, fulfillment in there. So you had to buy like 12, you had to buy the whole year to get his
yeah,
one story. And I think, I've heard different people talk about for writing. Some of them will say, oh, I want to do this. But at the time it was volume, which means you had to know what the audience wanted. You had to make it good. You had to be somewhat pithy. You had to move along pretty quickly. And I think that refined a lot of their writing. And very similar to when I say for artists, is too many artists look to get inspired rather than saying just do it. And every time I hear like a professional writer, they're like, well, what do you have to do? They're like, you write every day, whether you feel like it or not. You just write. You just do it, and then it becomes a process. And I think that that's part of it is too many people want to do it. Well, when I want to do it when I'm inspired. I'm like, that's fine if you're doing it as a hobby, but when you're doing it as your job, you
right.
need to
You
treat
you,
it like a
you
job.
you don't get to feel that way, when you're working in the factory or some such. You just got to do the thing, and push through it. You mentioned something. I was also amazed with how well Howard was able to relay what Conan would say in a completely new but perfect way. No
Okay,
worries. Hey,
I,
what's up? What's up, Huey?
I'm gonna.
He would everything Conan would say in Howard's books. It didn't sound like it was Arthurian. It didn't sound like it was from the Bible. It didn't sound like it was anything other than this, ancient way of speaking. But at the same time, we understood it without like the these and the thous or some other flowery way of
So,
showing that it wasn't modern vernacular. And everything Conan said was perfect.
well, well,
I
well. Let's remember, Conan is who are you writing for? You were writing for the common man. You weren't writing for the. You weren't writing. Which I talked about this before. You weren't writing towards your college educated professor.
but it still
You,
sounded like he had done some sort of research to get it right. How Cimmerians would talk
I
when faced with nobles and scoundrels and sorcerers and all these things. It wasn't, it didn't sound like it was modern, like a lot of modern fantasy movies. They use cliches and phrases from the era, and these were definitely. I mean, maybe they were from the 20s and 30s, and or I'm just not aware of it, but it didn't feel that way.
but I think that that's the. I mean, when we're talking about this whole point is when I read Conan, I didn't think that way to be honest. But Conan was a plain speaking man. It sounded like he was, a, which is again, who's
Cheers,
your
operator.
audience? Your audience again is your working class young young man. That's who your audience is for. That more than
But
anything else.
it still had an air of authenticity
Well,
for a fantasy world.
yeah, okay. I mean, I didn't notice. I've seen some when you start looking at it. I mean, you're right with Tolkien because he was a professor. He wrote like a professor of
Hmm.
of languages would. Which, okay, you're dealing with wizards and nobility. I mean, if you really look at it, almost all of them are nobles, with the exception of the hobbits. Um, and you're like, okay, I understand that part. But the
And
same
the
token,
same with Lovecraft. You could tell, he didn't get out much, with the the people he would consider lower class, individuals. You could tell that H.P. Lovecraft only spoke with certain kinds of people, and a lot of that was mostly in his head. So he didn't have these men of action speaking, to the common man. He had, academics speaking to other academics, and even when he tried to, you know put in, other people from lesser, stations in life, they always came across as like the yokels that you could tell in the real world he probably looked down on.
well,
That be,
I'm gonna. So I know that Lovecraft and Howard had two different viewpoints on
oh,
things.
absolutely.
But they correspond. But look where Howard, if I remember correctly, I could be wrong on the city, but Howard was in West Texas, which meant that yeah, I think it was Lubbock. It could be off, but anyway, but he was in
Detroit.
West Texas. Who are the people working out there? They're roughnecks. They're if you've ever been out in West Texas, and it doesn't matter where you go out in a lot of these areas, it's big, wide open spaces. There's not much to do. There's not a lot of if you
City life.
well, I mean, yeah, there's a little bit of city, but it's a rougher kind of city. You
Hmm.
know, I-
Yeah, I
even
mean, it
if
was, it was only, a couple of decades after, the Wild West era. So there were a lot of people still living that sort of lifestyle, at least talking that way. And his heroes and villains didn't come across as Texan, but everybody in Lovecraft's work came across as, New
New
Englanders.
England. Well,
Everybody.
but he wrote everything in New England for the most part. I mean,
Mhm.
he wasn't trying to. And again, they were going in two different areas, which is it's like my
Right.
friend who was from New York. I talked to my friend in New York, and she's talking to me, and we were going, completely different aspects. And I think that's whenever we talk about politics, a lot of the divide is just rural versus city. And I said, what
Mhm.
works in the rural areas does not work in the city in many cases, just because there are different certain.
Especially back then. Nowadays, we just,
Well, no, I mean, I'm just being honest. Even nowadays, as I talk to people when I was in Chicago, like, why do you need to do this? I'm like, look, and I remember talking to a guy. Well, he was a prick, but anyway, it was but no, he was a police chief for the crash program in L.A. Um, and he was kind of the attitude like, well, why does anyone need a gun? I said because it takes 15 minutes for the police to arrive where my son lives at 70 miles an hour.
yeah.
And he just had this flabbergasted look on his face, like, what? Like, look, there aren't police. There isn't a police officer within a mile. They can't respond immediately. It's not,
Yeah.
even though I'm in a smaller town, there are,
Even where I live, we have mostly sheriffs. Anything, bad happens, and it's 15 minutes if you're lucky.
well, no, no,
You
no.
know,
I'm saying if they left, how long would it take you to go to the police station from where you are right now?
I don't even know where the police station is.
Okay, well, yeah, yeah, but what I mean by this is that, like when I was in Chicago, whether I was there or not, there were always police within a mile. Like
Hmm.
where my son's mother is, there's like one, maybe two within 10 miles or 5 miles of where she is. Um, it's like they can't get out there, and I think that's what I'm referring to. Is there's a difference in attitude. It's just like you know, a perfect example is fire departments. Fire departments out in rural areas are almost all volunteer because they can't afford it, and it's just it. That's why I said it's when we
Yeah,
talk a lot of stuff is when we talk about a lot of political divides, and I don't mean you'll find out that a lot of it just comes down to what what you have to do in one area doesn't work in another, and that's why I'm all for federalism. But that's one of the things I think that happened with Lovecraft and Howard is Lovecraft grew up in a very um, urban area, and he wrote as an urban area, and he was terrified of and you saw this with Hawthorne. Um, the woods are evil. The woods are dark. I mean, I saw people from like perfect examples. I knew a lady from Chicago. She said she freaked out when she joined the military and went out in the woods. She said it's never quiet. There's always something moving and rustling and making
hmm
noises, and And in the meantime, I grew up with that stuff. I'm like,
Same
it's
here,
an
kind of.
owl.
I mean,
It's an
and where
owl.
I live now, if you go out, I was walking through a stretch of the desert, and there's little critters running around, lizards and probably snakes and squirrels, and other.
Crickets, cicadas, which a lot of people aren't used to hearing.
Yeah,
It's to say another good example is, and you can probably do this if you go further out from the city, you can actually see the stars.
yeah,
But
yeah,
if you like in Chicago, there was so much light pollution, let alone that it was fairly humid a lot of times. It was hard to see the stars,
yeah.
and yet when you go like when my son and I went out to Washington, yeah, there wasn't near the same amount of light pollution. You could actually see everything. Like, wow, this really is amazing at the sky. You understand why people wondered at stuff, and I think that was. And let's also be honest, is back in the 30s, it was hard to travel. It was. I mean, I remember my parents. Well, my parents talking about my grandparents when they travel cross country. They're
Mhm.
like, it took like a couple of weeks. You went on like little side roads and you got stuck behind stuff, and it might be 30 miles an hour, and we're only gonna make one stop, and you better go pee here. Yeah. Um, and I know up in Canada, I'm sure it's like that, just going from one side to the other as you go
Yeah.
up in
Off grid, you know
parts.
where the link is as well if you want to come in.
But here's the other part though, and I can tell this from a lot of people, city people. It's just like cars. I hear all these people, oh, cars are so terrible. Blah, blah. I said, yeah, but I want to live out in the country. I have to have a car because it doesn't make sense to do public transportation when the population is like 5 or 10 per square mile. It
Yeah.
just doesn't make any sense.
It can't be. It can't be. Cost effective either
Right.
to maintain a big old bus.
Yeah. But those are just the things that I think
Welcome
that
to the
get
show, Specific Nut.
um, but those are things that people forget about. And there are trains that go across. It's just not as much as they used to be. I'd love
Nope.
to have a high speed. I'll be honest, I like riding on railroads much better than I
Me
do
too.
driving.
But it's
um,
definitely better than taking the bus. And I've taken
oof,
like Greyhound from Virginia to California, from California to Mexico, and not just like Tijuana or El Paso, but I mean deep past
yeah,
Juarez. Not quite Mexico City, but yeah, we don't have any of that, and uh, it was actually quite fun doing all of that. But now, uh,
you get old and haggard. Or I'm sorry, if we're gonna go for the my one of the lines is old and sodded, from the Conan movie,
mhm.
when he was talking about. Anyway, no, I mean, but I think that, and this is where the real tragedy comes with Howard, is by the time that you're getting to Red Nails, by the time that you're getting Hour of the Dragon, or and stuff like that, and when you get to Hour of the Dragon, or what is it, Conan the Conqueror, or whatever it is, which is the other alternate version name up for it, you're going to be like, where, because he starts having, in D&D terms, he starts having henchmen, and he starts having all of these other people he's been adventuring with, but they never show up in any of his stories, and you feel so cheated because he's like, and so did this, and so did that. I'm like, damn it, Howard, why did you have to go into
That's another thing I've been noticing because someone brought it up. I forget which story. I think it was a witch shall be born. That he's not always in his own stories that much. There's been numerous chapters that were obviously they're setting the stage for the events to come, but chapters that are all about completely different people that when this story's over you will never hear from them again. But they get a whole chapter. There
well,
was
and
even
I,
one Conan story. I forget which one. I know it's coming up about those guys by the river
yep.
dealing with the Picts, and it's just them. And Conan never even shows up, and I'm like,
Well, he
that's
shows
kind
up
of
at the no, no. He starts at the beginning, he disappears, and then he shows up again at the end. But you know what though? I was okay with that. I like all that
yeah, yeah,
fleshing
yeah.
out.
No, that's what I mean. He was able to create interesting characters. Not always. Some of them were very two dimensional, especially the women. Let's not beat around that bush. Pardon the pun.
But you know what?
Uh,
Damn it, I'm okay with that.
right. What was her name from one of the last stories that Queen of India, Vendahai, whatever. She was one of the more three-dimensional characters. I know Valeria is a little more drawn out,
Well,
fleshed out, but that's
well, she only
something.
shows up. She only shows up in Red Nails, and yet you can tell by the way he writes is he writes as if he's known these people for years, or that there are a lot more stories. And
Mhm.
I think this is, and this is why, I think that there was such a tragedy. Besides the fact he committed suicide, was
Yes.
that he left so much that he could have fleshed it out. And I think that if he had lived another 30 years, which is not, unusual for stuff
Mhm.
like that. If he had lived another 30 years, he would have probably done what Michael Moorcock did, because I know you were talking about it, which was, hey, I did an anthology, and now we can all do them in order. And now we have all of the stories, and I can start creating a when he met so and so, and when he met this. And have you gotten to the part where he talked about the history of Hyperborea, of the Hyborian Age, and
Mhm.
what happened before and after Conan lived? Um, that's actually really good.
Not only have I read that like multiple times, more than any other story, but Marvel Comics in the both, I believe, Savage Tales and Savage Sword of Conan and the Conan comic book omnibus I'm reading had glorious, like, illustrated versions of those stories with just sweeping landscapes of armies moving and complete strangers doing things, throughout the ages of the
Yeah,
prehistory and the cataclysm and the Atlanteans and all this cool stuff. Those are really, really fine works considering, the artists were just, they had Conan's, Hyborian Age,
yeah.
historical document to work with, and then they would just create these really, you know,
It,
beautiful.
and some of it, whenever he was doing stuff, I mean, I have to laugh because he would do like, what is it, what was it, Gulistan, and he, some of these, you all knew where they were, but like Kitai, it wasn't until I started trying to learn Russian that Kitai is the Russian word for China. Um, you
Yes,
know,
see, I'm still having some difficulty with that sort of thing. Geography and history weren't my strong suits at all, and I'm like, it helps a little, because I know what India looks like, and I know what Egypt looks like. Egypt and Stygia are like the easiest one to just, to imagine for me. Uh, because it seems like everywhere else he's just, in the Middle East somewhere in a desert, except when he's in a jungle, or occasionally goes back to Cimmerian, he's in the snow. The architecture and things like that are very hard for
well,
me to
let's see.
imagine sometimes.
A lot of it was is that he was doing. I wouldn't even say it was the Middle East. Like the Middle East is kind of what he was also looking at for whenever he was doing, Shem and Stygia. But a lot of it felt like he was doing stuff from Hungary, that area, which is like Turkey and North, that area that's going right above probably the northern part of Iran and Iraq, and going
Mhm.
across, not the southern part of what we would think as the normal
As
Middle.
well as Persia and
Yes,
uh, you said Iraq and Iran, Afghanistan, things like that.
the
It
Kitai
seemed like
in China. Yeah.
it seemed like he spent most of his time in those areas. That's why with the, the Savage Sword game I'm running, that's why I picked, desert, because it just, so many Conan stories seem like that. And I guess living in Texas, or like where I live in the high desert, it's easy to imagine that kind of, the weather is a huge thing. I mean, I can't think of a single story of Conan's where it rains.
I
You
thought
notice
he had a couple of them where it was like overcast. I thought he did have some. I'd have to go double check. Like there was the one which was
in the first two Gnome Press books, I can't recall a single day of rain. It's always hot and dry, and his lips are turning black, and I'm like, This guy must have been one ugly mofo with all the harsh things that he had gone through. How many times he had his nose broken, his lips busted open, but yet he never lost a tooth. Everybody else loses teeth left and right, but not this guy. He's got a perfect set of choppers. Um, you know,
Hey, you know that. Yeah, I mean, there's. I will say as much as when you read Hour of the Dragon, he goes all over the place.
I'm
Uh,
that's that. I'll be reading that next week. I've already
that's
made.
that was my favorite of probably everything he wrote. But like I said, is he starts mentioning old allies and stuff, which never show up in any of his stories. So I'm beginning to think. I mean, this is just a personal opinion for it. Is
Yeah, great.
he had canon in his head. He just
Right. Right.
never wrote it down. And unfortunately, when his mother died, he shot himself. If he had just gotten through that, I think that we would have had a truly fleshed out, very similar to what Tolkien had with Cimmerian. Uh,
Off
where,
grid, and you never read Off Grid, have you?
so that's where I think that you're getting a lot of it.
Yeah.
It's
Hi.
just um, I think that's where people forget about all these things.
Hey.
They're coming into it.
How you doing, man?
Hello. That's Off Grid. Omen.
Another facial hair aficionado, I see.
Yeah. Very tired. I'm
Was-
gonna go sleep.
Was the
probably.
food good?
Yeah, the food was
Cheers,
pretty
man. Take care.
So, I,
Yeah, yes.
but I will say as much as, come on, how much of our fantasy stories are inspired by Conan more than most of the other stuff? I mean, he's sort of like laid. I mean, Edgar Rice Burroughs did part of it, laid open some of it, and then you got Conan coming into it. But I can't think of a lot of other early writers that were doing the
I can. I can think of one that got nowhere near as much love, and that's Fritz Lieber and Fafhrd and the Grey Mouser. In a lot of ways, I like them more. Because
but he's a generation after them.
is it a generation?
I mean, Fritz Lieber was still alive in the 70s. And
Okay.
Fritz,
Yeah.
because I remember Gygax actually at Gen Con saying, hey, we're going to have Fritz Lieber come in, and Moorcock
That's
was
true.
as well. But they were all in the 50s. And I mean, they were all following similar, in that 50s. What we had was we had Conan in the 30s, and then we had World War II, and then we had Tolkien. And then you start getting Moorcock and Fritz Lieber and all of those in the 60s and 70s.
Well, I mean, prior to that, of course, we had the Arthurian and Charlemagne legends, but other than that, I really can't think of that much.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
Other
all
than-
those were fairy tales.
Mhm.
I mean, even Arthur was a fairy tale.
The pulp trend and like the pulp trend around that time was to like appeal to the average person. So it was always like a person from that current time and day of the publication being put into a fantastical environment or somehow ending up there, lost there, or whatnot, and then embracing their beast side and becoming that warrior guy to get out kind of thing. I found in the old pulp magazines and stuff.
Yeah, I was never a big fan of that whole Connecticut Yankee and King Arthur's Court, the portal fantasies as we call them these days. It was just too much wishful thinking versus just create something out of whole cloth. Give us something that's
The whole
not
world.
that doesn't feel like the author is insinuating himself into their own fantasy. Because Robert E. Howard and H.P. Lovecraft didn't seem like Randolph Carter or Conan to me. They seem like different people.
Well, neither did Edgar Rice Burroughs for his heroes. I think that's, but I don't think any of us really cared. Before then, what were your other popular ones? When was Louis L'Amour stuff? Wasn't that before? I'm not sure.
My uncle had like all of those books.
Yeah, well, I mean, I know they were pre Korea, the Korean War.
Okay, let me check when the dates are. Just
It's almost like it helped usher in the Western trend. It's like it got everybody reading because reading was the most popular medium back then. I'd say second would be radio.
Well, radio.
Reading, you can really get into it,
Mm-hmm.
right? Whereas radio, you're kind of like a captive observant, right? to a
Yeah.
Well,
degree.
And then
When
when the
you're reading, you're
commercials
matching the
really break
voices.
the immersion.
Yeah.
I mean, radio came out. You did have your movies, for
Serials.
stuff. But I mean, if you look at it, when was the first book written for Edgar Rice Burroughs? That was like 13, or I mean,
Well, John Carter was 1912, but I know he had
Yep.
written other stuff before that, didn't he?
yeah, I'm sure he had. But I'm just saying. But we're talking about the stuff that they're famous for.
Yeah,
Um,
it's definitely 1912 then.
and then so we have the teens right there, and then we have H.G. Wells, which was doing his early sci-fi stuff, which was turn of the century. The other one we had, of course, was Bram Stoker, which was late, turn of the century, basically.
And Mary Shelley.
Well, and that was early 1800s, wasn't it?
Did it
Um,
Well, we
predate it?
also had whoever wrote Camille prior to Bram Stoker, which is, I don't even know.
When was the original? Like, is there an original? Like, when you go far enough back, you know how Alan Moore kind of brought them all together for League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. I'd say going back to those source materials and the pulp and earlier would probably need to be your examples.
so Frankenstein, let's see, when was that written? 1818.
Yeah, that's 100 years prior.
And so, but they were
Like,
asking
when was the
questions.
Quartermain written? The Quartermain stories,
Oh,
the League of
I would imagine
Extraordinary
those were the
Gentlemen,
same pulp adventure stuff too. Let's see.
and the Nautilus with
That was H.G. Wells, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So that was turn of the century, I believe.
Mhm.
So, like, most of the characters from that, you pull them in. Like, that's kind of some fantasy and horror right there, fiction. Between Dorian Gray, interesting story. That's an old story, I do believe. What other ones? Well, it directly references the Bram Stoker's Dracula with I think it's Mina Harker. It's in there.
Mhm.
Yes, yeah.
But
Dr.
also,
Jekyll
wasn't
and Hyde, another old one.
Tom Sawyer in there, or
Yeah.
was it Huck Finn?
I-
So that
I
goes
don't know
back.
which one actually. It's one of
So,
those
so
two.
let's see. Alan Quartermain, that's 1880s. And the same thing with Edgar Rice Burroughs. We have to remember that there were two different groups of people.
Took out.
Is who you're writing to, which was you're all the people that we're familiar with now. Edgar Rice Burroughs, Edgar Allan Poe. What was the other one? Was they're talking about Haggard. They were all written towards the average working class man. And so then you wanted some of that. And as much as, by my understanding, H.P. Lovecraft, while everyone tries doing stuff, had a pretty normal life. He was pretty normal and not well adjusted and everything else. Everyone tried.
Normal except for the Munchausen by proxy and the hypochondria. There was some mental illness in that family.
Well,
and
yeah.
a lot of over reliance on home remedies and doctor's care and that sort of thing.
Homeopathic remedies and all that. Naturopathic, homeopathic.
It seemed like he was always thought to be sick or always sick, in his youth.
Well, yeah.
That compounded his own fear of going insane because of both his parents went nuts. So he was always, doing the medical version of, crossing himself against evil spirits.
So to get the idea from In the Mouths of Madness from sitting down with his parents for dinner or what?
I don't know.
Well, you know what though is I'm looking at like some of the stuff in the background and you start reading like he was a journalist. Yeah. So
it wasn't too hard to be a journalist back in those days. It's like if you wanted to get out there, get a scoop and take it and get it printed. There was always papers that were in rivalry, so you'd always get something about one person. One newspaper would not print about that person, but you'd find the opposite paper and they would print about that person because they're not in alignment. So you just got to find dirt on important people, and you had a job back then.
Well, and it's funny because a lot of these writers, it's very similar to a lot of painters. They don't get the literary success until after they're dead.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Because they're saying right here is, Shadow of Innsmouth only sold 400 copies, of which 200 of them were destroyed because the publisher went bankrupt. Yeah.
Ouch. So sold a fraction of that thing. Oh.
And how many thousands has he sold after his death? That's why it's
Millions,
so funny.
millions.
I know that's why I just have to laugh at it. And I
But
think,
it seems like there's always an August Derleth to continue carrying the torch for these guys.
well, it's because one person reads it and they go from there. I mean, it's just like for the rest of us is, and I want to mention this about people talk about Dungeons and Dragons and things like that. Well, yeah, we played in the old days, and it's you're bringing stuff up, and they're like, people are just not familiar with it. Well, where'd that come from? It's just like whenever we're talking about Appendix N.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of us never read the Appendix N. We just read Tolkien, and we just moved on, and we might have read a couple of the others, but we aren't reading like a lot of the.
Yeah, I must have been the exception because, since I lived in used bookstores, I had a used bookstore across the street from my house for the first 16 years of my life, and I was over there every day looking for new stuff. And when I got my DMG, and I saw all the books that Gygax was inspired by, and then when I think the big one was when I got the Deities and Demigods book. Also,
Yeah.
when I first discovered the Cthulhu mythos in the Deities and Demigods book, and I'm like, what the shit is this? This is some crazy ass crap. I want this. I want this in my games. And of course Moorcock's, Elric, and the
Yeah.
New Old Myth, all of which I recognize from the Appendix N, and I'm like, okay, now I've got some imagery to put to these, names to put to these faces, or faces to put to these names. I'm like, yeah, I want to see these monsters. I want to read about these creatures and these heroes and these villains and whatnot. That was a genius move, putting that in there, at least for me, to be able to go and look for these books by these authors.
I mean, for me, I was not a fantasy reader for a lot of stuff.
No,
I-
me neither. I started out with things like The Shadow, Doc Savage, Perry Rodan, and Marvel Comics.
Mhm.
Well, and for
How
me,
many-
I was a big comic book fan. I was not. I mean, I read some of them. It was just I was not. I hated superheroes. I've always hated superheroes. Um, the but I would just delve in mythology. So I was just Norse mythology and everything else for that. And so that's what Greek mythology, especially werewolves, vampires, ghosts. Those were all those things I thought were really cool. And then I always wanted a realistic version, which, to be fair, of course, we have, which I think people forget about. It's whenever they say, well, this is stereotyping whatever. I'm like, yes, it stereotypes everything. D&D stereotypes everything in Europe, too. It's an equal treatment. They're just trying making it awesome. Anyone that says that Oriental Adventures isn't awesome never read it.
I think it was a dumb business move of TSR, or like whoever had the rights of, not TSR, but whoever had the rights to the Elric Pantheon and any of the other stuff that was in there that caused that Deities and Demigods to be taken out. Like that caused crop sales. It exposed a whole bunch of new readers that had never
the
read.
company that owned Call of Cthulhu, also had the rights to Elric. So it wasn't in their best interest for TSR to be using their characters. They weren't really their characters, but they were licensed. So games like Stormbringer and Elric, those two games, as well as the Call of Cthulhu game that was out, roughly the same time as the Deities book, it was competition with their game, but or at least from their perspective, little did they know that it drove people to go buy their product. D&D fans are like, hey, this Cthulhu stuff's pretty cool. Where can I get more? Oh, there's a called Call of Cthulhu. Yeah, I'll take a copy.
So by my understanding, Chaosium raised the flag. They went back and forth. Apparently they had an agreement that they could use the deities and stuff like that as long as they referenced Chaosium. And TSR said, nah, we'll just pull those out. It was kind of a dick move. Is what
It seems like it.
TSR was the one that pulled the crap out more.
Oh, did it? Okay.
Yeah, Chaosium. It was. I think the agreement was that you could use them, but you also had to say, but you had to reference Chaosium, in your credits. And Gygax said, "No, we'll just pull it out."
which is really kind of dumb. I was lucky in that I had grandparents who encouraged me to read. My grandmother gave me money to buy any book that I wanted, and that's how I bought my first Conan. Nice.
It's what I'll mention this much, which is, and this is not is
There you go.
people who read to their children. That's what gets kids into reading. And it's the same reason that while we're talking about our Appendix N, which is first edition Dungeons and Dragons, and that fifth edition is relying on really the stuff that came out of the 90s. So that's why there's a very different feel to it. And I'm not, whether I like fifth edition or not, I'm like, okay, I look at my son, I'm like, he's going, his Dungeons and Dragons is based off the literature for his age group that's reading more than what I was reading at his age, 50 years before. So, I'm not knocking some of it. It's just like, okay, but it's not for me. But that was one of the reasons I got into a lot of other stuff, because I'm like, dinosaurs, awesome. Why aren't there more dinosaurs?
It's funny if you think about it. TSR and Chaosium could have, joined forces
Mm-hmm.
and made a whole lot more money. And welcome to the show, Pat Merck.
I'm not sure if you heard, but Chaosium wasn't giving their residuals or whatever to Moorcock, and they basically Moorcock sued him for all the back stuff that they were owed, that he was owed, and almost every major game company has filed for bankruptcy, whether it's TSR, West End Games, Game Designer Workshop. I think Basta just stopped and they just licensed the stuff off. A lot of these went I think that was one of the things that people forget about is, but I agree with you. And it's a different system, but you know what? Dragon Magazine advertised for all those other games, and that's what got me to read Dragon Magazine.
Right? I mean, they didn't have to do that. They could have, gone the way of the Future Games Workshop and just made it all about TSR. But no, there was stuff in there from the very beginning. There was games anytime, Bad Mark.
Well, that was part of when Lorraine Williams took over.
All right, I'm gonna head out. See you later, guys.
Oh, see you later.
Take care, Off Grid.
All right.
No,
you don't see my face anyways, so have a good one.
Sorry about that.
But she, Lorraine Williams, I think, did it for Dragon Magazine, where they stopped putting in advertisements for other games. And at that point, I stopped buying Dragon Magazine because, that was for me. And what was it, Margaret Weissman or whatever, or Margaret Weiss? She didn't have the rights to Dragonlance, but man, they sold millions of books for that, and the Visit, by Salvatore. And that's what I hate saying. That's what people grew up on in the '80s, and that's what they thought D&D was based off on. Whereas we're looking at it from, which is more of a 2E. What is 2E going off of? I'm like, look, I want the old-fashioned stuff. I'd much rather have the things that going, calling back to the old Arthurian legends and stuff like this. And and this sounds terrible, but I didn't read Conan until what, 2 or 3 years ago. So. Because I thought I knew everything, Oh no, it's this, it's that, and I'd seen the comic. And I was like, oh, this is, and then I read it. I was like, oh, okay, this is much better than I thought it was. And what amazed me is he had to know something about armor, because his armor was better than a lot of descriptions for it.
What do you mean?
If you actually listen to him, the cuirass and stuff like this, it was actual real armor pieces and things like that when he talks about the different types of armor and what he's putting on. He must have had a really good encyclopedia or something that he was accessing to look at it.
Yeah, that probably wouldn't have been hard. Go to the local library and find the one and only book on armor.
but we're talking 1930s, and he's out in West Texas. It's not like there's a huge plethora of, you know. Of course, that was back in the area when people actually bought encyclopedias. So. Well,
when I think about it, my, mind you, this was 50 years later or so. My school library had a fair selection of books that had, things like weapons and armor in them.
yeah, mine did too. I'm not sure where your speaker's coming from, because I can hear feedback from myself.
That's weird.
But no, you were talking about the Frost Giant's Daughter, but I kept reading Gods of the North, which was the original published version. So I was like, oh, wait a minute. And that's where they don't call him Conan, they call him Amar. Yeah. And then because apparently Weird Tales rejected that one. And I always liked, I know you didn't like the story, but I did. Because that to me exactly is what would happen for characters like for dryads in D&D, where they're like, oh, they charm the player character, and you never see him again.
The Wizard of Earthsea wasn't a bad one, but I don't know. There were things about it that I wasn't super thrilled with, but it had some. It really did have some moments that were kind of interesting. It's another one of those that you never hear about.
So yeah, and I haven't read any
Howard
other stuff.
is one of the greats. At least when it comes to, fantasy. I don't. I don't read a lot of science fiction anymore because it's lost something over the years. The more we learn, the more the fantastic gets taken away, and it just becomes more about the factual, and that takes out some of the fiction for me out of it.
My issue is that most of it seems to have become dystopian, and rather than aspirational. And I like some don't get me wrong, I like some dystopian. I just don't want it all the time.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same reason that I don't want my fantasy to be the drudgery of dysentery and cholera.
Right, or the poverty, and the peasantry, and things like that. Conan was, kind of the lowest of the low, but you never felt that way, except when some perfumed fop would look down his pointy nose at him, and Conan didn't give two shits. He was ready to gut him like a fish at a moment's notice.
I mean, the judge. I still love that from the Queen of the Black Coast, where he talks about the judge. That's where respect has to go both ways.
Mm-hmm.
But that's another thing is, where does Conan? Where do we always find Conan when he fights Thrak? Where is he? We found him in jail. Oh, we found him here. Oh, well, where does he start off for Queen of the Black Coast?
Mm-hmm.
He's running away from the law. Where was the Black Colossus? I can never remember which ones are which, but the one where you said like he's in the mud and he's going through and his army's been destroyed.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, oh, okay, and
something shadows, something. Yeah. Shadows are in a lot of the titles, and while I get a nickel every time somebody mentions it, that's about it, and it gets a little like, come on, and I can't, I can't give them too much trouble because the module I'm writing has shadows in the title, but that's neither here nor there, I guess.
Well, if you're using shadows, you're using shade. But if you use the word shade, then you're usually talking BDSM. But no, it's Beyond the Black River. Yeah, exactly. But then there was the the other part that gets into, he
That one's
goes
coming
all
down my
over.
reading list. Batmer. Uh, that one's rough. That
Which
one's
one?
rough.
Beyond the Black River?
Mm-hmm.
I like the fact that he mentions the saber-tooth tigers and stuff, which is one of the things that,
Howdy,
you know,
Coco.
we all talk about this stuff, but man, you realize in just how much Atlantis pervaded that era.
Mm-hmm.
I need to read. I have it and downloaded, but Ignatius Donnelly's. He became a member of Congress specifically so he could go access the Library of Congress,
Mm-hmm.
so he could go read about Atlantis. Um, and it's interesting on just the stuff and how much people were into Atlantis at the time and Hollow Earth and all the cool
Oh,
stuff
and,
that.
and your Casey and all that crazy crap.
Oh,
You
those are
know,
great. I think that there needs to be, I think that that's one of the things that's been missing. Is yeah, okay, fine, that was a game in the 1980s, but man, it's like no one wants to do that anymore. They're all like, well, we're just going to make it like Harry Potter kind of stuff. I was like, no, no,
I cannot stand Harry Potter. I just sorry guys, I just can't. Um,
I'll be honest. I don't mind Harry Potter. It was well read, but it's not aimed at me. It was like a lot of things. I don't say something's bad if it's not aimed at me. It's aimed at a different age group and different group. I want the sword and sorcery, heroic stuff. Um, Harry
right,
Potter is meant more for it's very British, upper class kids and,
yeah,
going to boarding school. And I went, okay, could you get any further from my life? That's,
true, true.
um, but again, I don't mind it too much any more than anything else. It's just, okay, it's not my thing. But I knew a lot of people that loved it and it aimed at again, if we're going to talk fantasy, there are different demographics. It's
Sure,
just like different RPGs.
sure. It's just there's so many nerdy stereotypes just insinuated in that, like it's only caring to appeal to those people, the very same people that I was never part of that group. Growing up, sure I read all the cool stuff, but I wasn't uh, part of that group.
Oh, so in other words, specific nut is if you live like Conan, it means you're broken in jail a lot. Uh,
And never mind. Not even going to go there.
I mean, that's where a lot of his stories start off with. That's why the typical Conan is,
Mhm.
hey, guess what? You're now in the gully of a ship or the galley of a ship, and you're a slave, and you have to break out. That is a trope that's out there that I think is missing as far as high adventure. That's the other part is people just want high adventure, whether it's Errol Flynn or that's a lot of the other stuff that we look at. Is we talk about the sword and sorcery, which is supposed to be what is that going to be like pre-Roman era? Is the way we look at it, and then you
Yeah.
go over and you look at the swashbuckling
like
buccaneers.
I live like Conan. All right, great guys. So you were the king, and then you got kicked out, and you got to take it back. What kingdom would that be? Because I could use a job, uh,
well, the
swinging a sword.
well
Um,
the problem is that they've all been replaced with lizard people. I'm sorry, snake people. That's,
what a great freaking trope! Oh my god, I love the snake slash reptile people. Oh my god, that's so much fun. From Howard to Star Trek and the Gorn and V and oh my god, it's
well,
the
that's
perfect human adversary with so many similar qualities. Civil. When it comes to civilization and wanting to be part of one and create one, etc. But then the warm versus the cold blooded, if you will.
well, a lot of people are afraid of snakes, so it works out really well.
Mm-hmm.
For creepy. The other one, of course, is spiders. Spiders and snakes are your typical tropes for getting people terrified of things. Um, and
I would give it another read. Cal, it's not bad. It's not bad. The protagonist does remind me a bit of Gnarls. Just saying, there's some aspects that I can see you borrowing from or adopting. V was a really good series, and it had that perfect, reptilian bad guy disguised as humans, borrowed from Cull. So that's and we make the lizard people joke around here quite a bit because it's so perfect to have why there hasn't been like a sci-fi movie, like a war, War of the Worlds or Mars Attacks, but humans versus lizards, but we know they're lizards. That would be so great. We had the Kilroth from Wing Commander, the cats. We haven't really had a good Spider Menace either. That would be fun, but I think lizards just offer so many opportunities for
Well,
the perfect opposite of humanity.
well, Star Frontier said the Sathar with their worm snake bodies,
Sure.
and then you had, there are a few of them out there, but yeah, it's
Mhm.
but
And there was that one that was a great game back in the seven. Oh my goodness! You're just gonna leave, you big dumb. Come on, Chewie. I think it was Star Control against the Urquan, and there were these big giant spiders. You guys remember that video game back in the day where you would travel from planet to planet looking for resources, but you had a time limit before the Urquan would just annihilate the galaxy and take over everything? No, there's no food in here for you. You cannot have that. There's onions in it. And now you're going to leave.
um, but no, I mean, there's a lot of the little side note is, as much as we talk about that, is, well, we talk about Conan. Let's not forget about the favorite cartoon, which was Thundar the Barbarian,
Mm-hmm.
which
Mm-hmm.
was I at some point I still would like to play kind of, I like to try the DCC stuff because I have it. Um, I love to do that stuff for it. I have one of my friends said he'd run the game for me if they ever have a weekend off, um, which I think would be cool. We were talking about Dungeon Crawl Classics and Mutant Crawl Classics. I said, yeah, it'd be kind of fun to do stuff like that. I've got all of the Conan books from Modiphius, and it amazes me on how many books they're able to put out for things, but not everything has to be magical. Not everything has to be out there. I'll tell you this much: is if you can play it right, a saber-tooth tiger is pretty scary. A regular
Mm-hmm.
tiger is pretty scary. Lions.
Oh
Um,
yeah, how many times did he deal with, the semi-intelligent ape people?
oh yeah, the Jewels of Guahir or whatever it is.
I
I
was
love
thinking
that.
Rogues in the House or
Thrak.
um,
Well, there was
yeah.
the Thrak one, which was Thrak was and
Uh,
you know
the other one with Shadows in the Moonlight or whatever when they're
yep.
where they're on the island and the statues, but then there's that big freaking ape throwing rocks at them all the time.
Oh well, there was that one, and then you've read Jewels of Guahir, right?
I've read almost every Conan story,
Okay.
but rereading them, I'm mentally kicking out a lot of the Lynn Carter Sprague de Camp
Oh yeah.
stuff that they made up. So it's I'm still doing some mental house cleaning, as it were.
So the Jules of Guahir, he was going out there, but that's where he and so typical of the pulp is, it's very similar to Indiana Jones because that was all based off of that too, which is, I have the Holy Grail, but I have to save my father, and so you like lose the Holy Grail or whatever the treasure is. Um, yeah.
Yeah, we just read the Shadow Kingdom about 6 months ago in the book club, and that's always a good read. I'll listen to the audiobook from time to time, and I'm going to be doing for you Cull fans, not in October, but in November. We're doing what's called, thanks to Doc Flamingo, uh, Atlantean Autumn, where we're going to just
But
talk
then,
about Cull and Atlantis and stuff like that. And so I get to do more Robert E. Howard stuff, but I can revisit all the Cull novels. the Call movie, which I've never seen with Kevin Sorbo, uh, and the Call comic books, which I read some. I always go back to 1977. Was this for me? Was this just peaky year? I was 10. We got Star Wars. We got the Micronauts. We got uh, John Carter. We got Heavy Metal Magazine, and I also discovered Conan and Cull and all these things that were at the comic book store, but they weren't superheroes wearing their underwear on the outside. They
Yeah.
were comic book stories, but not you know superheroes and capes and weird boots and stuff. It was all you know swords and sorcery or science fantasy or you know out there gonzo science fiction.
So when you're looking at Primal, I've watched all except like the last two episodes. Or there's like a very last bit, but I enjoyed Primal. Um,
I don't know what that
you know,
is.
it is the same guy that did Samurai Jack did
Oh, okay.
basically Primal, and what it is it's a caveman, and he basically his family gets eaten by a tyrannosaur. He kills anyway. He becomes friends with the tyrannosaur at the end, and then they go on their adventures from there. Um,
It sounds like uh, there was a Marvel. I want to say Marvel comic book, not Commandy, Last Boy on Earth, but like Dino Boy or something. But it was a Jack Kirby comic book. His art, but it was about a kid who would ride around on a dinosaur in a prehistorical era. That was kind of weird. I'm looking at trying to get the Commandy. If you guys remember those comic books, there was the precursor to what was his name, Thundar, because it
yeah,
was a post-apocalyptic society, but he was the last human, and there was crap tons of uplifted animals and mutated animals and weird crap. But it's really expensive. But I gotta think that it was a huge influence on Gamma World because of all the obvious similarities. Yeah, I just read Shadows of or in
yeah,
Zambula
yep.
with the
No, no. I
camis.
mean
That one
that was
was that was a
that,
rough one.
but that was another good one. I like the whole ideas for it. Whether they're perfect or not, I'm like, okay, this is great for villains. That's but no, and I agree with the audiobook. Um, I got the Conan one. I don't really like the reader, but it's like all of the collected works of R.E.H. Howard for Conan. It's like
Mhm.
32 hours long, and so
I
I was
just I
like,
just found an audiobook uh, playlist or whatever on YouTube, and it's like you said, it's like
yeah.
40 hours of stuff. But it seemed like there was a bunch of stuff that wasn't Robert E. Howard, and I'm like, I'm not touching anything Conan wise that isn't Robert E. Howard until I've made my way through the gnome books and so I can recognize what is and what isn't his style and his works because I was looking at the I think it's the Daw book series or the Ace book series with the Frazetta covers, and there's
Yeah.
a whole bunch of stuff in there that I'm like going from the gnome books where this is the Conan stories in chronological order according to the oldest source, and then I'm seeing all this other stuff that's not in those books or anywhere else but the Daw books. I think it's a Daw series, and I'm like, okay, this is stuff that's made up. Therefore, technically, I don't know what its source material is, other than maybe Lynn Carter and Sprague de Camp, getting some notes, going, oh, here's a paragraph. Let's write a 30-page story. Like,
Well, you know what? That's what writers do. I'm going to mention one thing about Coco B. I'd say it's not a kids' cartoon, but I would have watched it. You know what? As a child, I watched all sorts of stuff that was violent for cartoons, and especially the Japanese crap, which was completely silly with the blue blood and everywhere else, spraying everywhere in the late '70s.
mm-hmm.
But if you're going to talk about cartoons, how can we forget Fire and Ice?
That was a great cartoon. Speaking of drawing, though, Bad Merc, if you are, in fact, halfway decent artist. I never met you, so I don't know. Try to find me in Discord through, if you know Coco or anybody else here, because I can't send the link out right now. Hit me up in Discord because I'm looking for some art for my Savage Sword 3-part adventure module that's going to come out in a couple of months, maybe. And we still need some art because right now all we've got is the stuff I've been coming up with through Night Cafe, and some of it's not bad, but I wouldn't mind having some real line drawings, black and white, Conan esque, Savage sort of Conan esque imagery to put in there. Hey, what's up, Pookie? Want to come
I
say
mean,
hi there,
there's
please?
there's but again, that's what about the other ones we also grew up on, the Herculoids, which was kind of a
Oh yeah, that
mixture,
was a good one.
and
Even though the father walked around in a dress and a tiara, a skirt and a tight tiara,
it's
nobody ever notices that. I was looking at it the other day and I'm like, wait a minute, he's wearing a skirt and a tiara. Just saying. I mean,
same thing to be
he had
said
a
for
smoking
togas.
he had a smoking cartoon wife, so I can't say too much, but it was just like, and
But
I get it. Back
I
then,
know
lots of men wore kilts and skirts, and that's all they had.
togas, all sorts of other stuff like that. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it's, if you ever look at the Romans with their, they're not wearing pants. So, um,
Now, Jack Kirby was a great one. Hey, Doc, we were just talking about you, and I'm stealing your Atlantean Autumn, doing it in November. If you try and do it in October, that's the only way you beat me to the punch. But maybe you can help me, spread your idea of talking about Atlantis, sunken cities, ancient civilizations, and of course Kull, all through November.
so I anyway, but it had all the classic stuff that I loved, that I grew up on, and that's what I missed. But the one thing I do love again is, if we're going to talk about it with Fire and Ice, is the writing the pterosaurs as they're coming in. You know, and I just think that is so cool. And the same thing with did you got Battle System, right, when it
Yeah, I
came
did.
out?
I had it. I wish I would have never got rid of it, but I
Well,
had it.
do you remember the cover art where where the barbarians riding the Ceratasian?
Mhm.
I'm not sure if it's a Styracosaurus or whatever in there. I'm like,
Mhm.
yes, that's what I want for my characters too.
Yeah, dinosaurs are. I'm kind of surprised that Howard didn't use more dinosaurs. It's just okay now.
Howard did Howard, you know what though, is I think Howard was trying to say, hey, this is a time of Atlantis. And so he was aiming at the Pleistocene, like the saber-toothed tigers
Mhm.
and mammoths and stuff like that, and trying to stay away from
That's
the
fine. But that just means I'm going to have to write something, about cavemen, and Atlanteans or something, and have dinosaurs. That's not Dinotopia because that was. Uh, it
and
could have
then
been great. Could have been great, but it wasn't. Sorry. Uh, it came across kind of.
which one for Battle System or the
No, no. Dinotopia.
oh, you know what though is um
See you
that was
later,
part of the
sweetie.
reason that I loved X1, is just that not that the artwork is nearly as good as it did, by the time 2E came out, but that view of the having the Tyrannosaur on the front cover, that to me was just great. Um,
Off grid. Where did you get to read Commandy? Was it a digital thing? Because I was looking at that omnibus, and it's still like $100, and I can't, as much as I want to, and literally can't afford it. Some of these omnibuses are, you know, $100. Maybe one a month, but the more I read them, the more I want to get them, and it would be nice to be able to read them uh, before
I mean,
paying for them. Oh,
that's
that
just
that is one of my
oh
favorite
yeah.
modules. X1
Oh, I
is
know. I love this thing. I love that to me is my favorite. And again, this is the Goodman game version, which I don't know. Speaking of which, why the old TSR just didn't, you know, hire them to do more of these. I thought that would have been good for TSR to do, but not TSR, but WotC. But yeah, it's. But yeah, there's just something to be said. I mean, as much as we talk about it, but I have a book of Pleistocene animals. I mean, when you start hearing about the giant sloths, you're like, oh, they don't seem that bad. And you start finding out they have armor and these cloths are 6 or 12 inches long. And it's like, well, and then you find out they aren't sure if some of them may have eaten meat. You're like, man, that gets a lot more terrifying when you start adding all that up.
Mm-hmm. Hey, Batmark, are you subscribed to the channel? If so, or even if not, uh, send me like a comment so that I can subscribe to your channel, and then we can communicate about taking a look at your work and maybe doing some business. Yeah, you sold off Battle Systems too, Cal. Yeah, I got to use it like one time with my group. I kind of they got involved in a war, and I had it all laid out and made it as simple as possible for them, and they just did not. Just no, they just didn't want to do it, and I'm like, you don't want to be on the front lines and all this stuff, and they're like, no, we just want to keep going into dungeons and being the the elite squad, and I'm like, I get that, but you got a paladin over here, you got a warrior over here. You don't ever want to lead your troops or men into battle, and no, no.
The other thing I do, not that you're there, when you get to Hour of the Dragon, you mentioned something about a vampire, but there were a lot of things that I felt that they could have fleshed out and they just didn't. Like he meets this one lady down and she appears just briefly and then disappears right off the page. You're like, man, you could have done so much. There could have been a whole story just right there. Anyway, it was,
Mhm. Yeah, that's the other thing too. I remember reading King Cull in the comic book form, and he gets married, and they have a little boy named Khan, and they keep getting kidnapped back and forth, and he's got to go rescue him. I'm like, okay, that's cool, but I don't know anything about this queen that he marries and how she could compare to some of the ladies in the past. What's lame, Cal? I might be missing something. She had to be one hell of a woman for him to, finally, you know, settle down,
well,
so to
well,
speak.
that was Call. That was Call. That was,
No, 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 no. Well, in King Conan, the comic books, uh,
the comic book. Okay, never
you
mind.
know, if that never happens in the Conan novels that I'm about to read, if he never does actually get married and never have a kid, then that whole omnibus is just going to be fan fiction in my brain, and I don't like that. If that makes any
It's
sense.
all fan fiction. Damn it, it's fiction.
No, no, no. What I mean is like
Oh yeah.
it's like this. If I wrote something right, and I made something really, really cool, and people liked it like a lot. Oh, okay. Thanks, Cal. Yeah, it was lame. And I wrote something, don't think I ever will, but let's just and I wrote something really, really, really cool. And say long after my son is, uh, got his own family, and someone starts writing stories and making up crap with my stuff, I would not be happy about that. I know there's nothing I can do about it because I'm dead, but I wouldn't want people to do that unless I specifically said, yeah, go ahead. When I'm gone, continue the story. Go ahead, because
Well,
being the control freak that I am, I don't want people with my stories, and especially with lately when we've seen what people have done to some great characters from the old days and turning them into things that we all know their creator would be furious about and would just flat
well,
out say no, no, you're not
well.
turning freaking Nightwing gay. No,
You know
he
what?
was never gay. Shut the hell up.
You
How
know
is that
what?
even a thing when he was banging Starfire for 20, 30 years? Just no, right?
You can do whatever you see with my IP. But
Well, you do make a very, very good point, but I am the stubborn, curmudgeonly type that, and the world famous control freak that I don't know. I think I would maybe make stuff, in two categories. Here, this is stuff you can, go ahead and do whatever dumb gate shit you want with it. But this stuff is off limits. You know what I
Well,
mean?
here's the reality, and the
They're all
fans will do
furries
that.
now.
Here's the reality. The fans will do that for you.
I
That's
know.
that's all that really matters. The fans will do that for you. Like you. Not that George Lucas did the best on the original trilogy, but not the original trilogy, but the prequels. But the stuff that's canon from the original movies were like, hey, guess what? If Star Wars dies, it's like, wait a minute, they made a sequel. Like, no, they didn't. When did this happen? That's
No,
it's
I remember when I was watching Lucas do something back before all the other movies except the original three, where he said uh, the only thing that's canon is the first three movies. Having read Splinter of the Mind's Eye, Han Solo at Star's End, The Revenge of Han Solo, all of the comic books, all the other crap. And I'm like, wait a minute, you took a paycheck for that. You let them write that. And then you went and said, yeah, it's just bullshit. I just took their money.
hey.
That's kind of slimy.
I don't view that as slimy. That doesn't bother me at all because guess what? For me, as
But that encourages people and gives people the wrong idea. It's like, oh, yeah, sure, you can do this, you can do this. I'll take your money, and then I'm going to berate it and demean it and say it's absolutely garbage. But thanks
that's
for the.
not what he said. He said it's just not canon. They're two different things.
But it still implies that it isn't. It's a waste of your time to read unless you are really bored and you can't just write up your own fan fiction or use your imagination to just daydream about it. And you buy this guy's product or multiple products, thinking, oh, this is part of the thing. But then you find out it's not part of the thing. It's literally nothing to
No, it's
the
an
eyes of the
alternate.
creator.
It's an alternate timeline. I really don't care, to be honest, because at the end of the day, I'm reading for a
I
story.
know, but it's just like,
And here's the problem, like you said, with Marvel. The problem with Marvel is they went bankrupt. When they went bankrupt, they had to sell it off, and when you have to sell it off, you lose control. Um, and that's really what I hate saying this. If you really want control, then you have to do two things. One is you have to make sure that you live forever because copyright's 95 years after you die. Uh, I don't know if you've seen what they've done with Popeye the Sailor Man and the horror movies and Winnie the
no,
Pooh. Oh, yeah, they now have a horror movie based off Popeye the Sailor Man. Like, blood, guts, and
really,
gore. Oh, yeah. It was just anyway, because once it goes in public domain, it's free. It's like, when we're talking the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, I think all those characters are from the 1800s. Frankenstein, the Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, the Invisible Man, Alan Quartermain, and what was the one for the Nautilus? Yeah.
yeah. That is kind of why I want grandchildren, so they can just keep keeping that crap whatever I do right in the family because I would hate to have to come back and haunt some writers.
Well, again, I don't mind if you can write well. What bothers me is not only are you killing the character, but you're a lousy writer, which actually, in many ways, just cements you forever because they're pale images and shadows of your greatness. So it's like, go ahead, try whatever you want. Uh, so, well, yeah, no, yeah, but the horror, who cares if they had horror flops? They were doing stuff. Some of it was just a big fu to Disney. Steamboat Willie. Guess what? We're going to use Steamboat Willie as the murderous mouse. Like, oh, okay.
I've actually got a Steamboat Willie glass that an ex girlfriend bought. I mean, mind you, back in the '80s, she bought it for my mom when we went to Disneyland, and she and I split up, obviously. And my mom passed away, and I still have it. And it's this nice frosted
Yeah.
glass about this big. I've had it, freaking forever, and never use it. Never use it.
Oh,
Just sitting in dust.
Did you hear that Morgan and Morgan is suing Disney over Steamboat Willie?
Why?
Because Disney got pissed off. So what they're trying to do is they're trying to make sure it's trademarked, and because if it's trademarked, that's different. That's why a lot of the Conan stuff, even though it's technically in public domain,
Mm,
um, if you try using stuff like John Carter, that's trademarked. And if you
mm,
try using, I guess, some of the Conan stuff, like R.E.H. Howard's Conan, they will get you for that because they've trademarked that and said, no, no, you're infringing on the trademark, not the copyright. Um, that
mm,
said, is, for us, as much as weird as that is, and we're
mm.
talking about doing this, what do you think all the games are? All the games are fan fiction for stuff, and that's why, whether it was
Sure,
Merp
sure,
or
sure.
Conan, the Conan RPG, and like I said, is I'm going to change it up just as like I said, is I love the Conan RPG. I do. I have all the books. Um, I can tell that some of them were kind of thin and they were grasping at straws, but it's because
Yeah.
unfortunately, Howard only had 10 years worth of material,
Right,
if
right,
that.
and it all fits into six hardback books at about 3,000 pages or less.
That's actually a lot when you think about it. I mean, if you think about this,
My math could be off. Let me redo that. Let's just redo that real quick because I think my math was horrible.
well, it depends on how big the print is, things like that. Um,
I was off by 50%. Try 1,500 pages.
well, 1,500 pages is still a lot when you think about it.
Yeah, yeah.
It's just, I think that what Howard did is he left us a world where we want to, which is what you always want with a writer, where we want to know more about it. We want to know and how things work, and we want to know like that whole history. And the same thing happens with Tolkien with Merp. Merp was fleshing out areas that were never really done by Tolkien, or it was just like one line here and one line there. Um, so yeah. So I mean, those are. But that, for me, this is one of the reasons I didn't read fantasy. I've got RPGs. I want to write my own fantasy for this. Give me the flesh out of the world, and I'll build it from there.
Hmm.
Um, that's one of the reasons I said I like Dark Sun. But boy, once they start getting that meta plot, I'm like, yeah, I'm tossing at your stupid meta plot.
Which
I don't.
was
Oh, um, I never read the books. I was reading just bits and pieces of it.
oh
But then,
okay. I thought I thought I knew you better, and I couldn't imagine you actually being talking about the anti-slavery thing because we're all
no,
not
no, no,
fans.
no. Well, let's rephrase this. There was always anti-slavery in Dark Sun.
Yeah,
It was just a setting full of slavery, just like in
and
Conan.
that was
Conan,
exactly, it
yeah,
was a great way to see just how heroic your players are. Are they going to rise up against this obvious, this absolutely obvious injustice? Are they gonna rise up and do the right thing, or are they gonna just like act like it's just normal? We can't change that. Nothing we can do about it. Let's just move on. And then next thing
well, it's
ninth level, and they're buying slaves left and right. No,
well, you
I
can still
want to
buy
see.
slaves. But hey, here's the thing. It's how do you treat them more than anything else. I mean, I hate saying this. No one
We
really wants to talk about this. Back in the day,
we here know that in the
yeah,
ancient times those people were treated uh, better than we can imagine and
it
better than the name implies. But in the modern world, the word itself, it means only one thing, and that's the worst way possible they could be treated. Uh, you know,
it
regular.
depends on which type of slave type you have.
Right.
If you had criminals slaves, then they got it far worse than anything
Well,
that we had.
when it
If they
came
were,
when it came to the women, I think everybody just assumes that they were just, being regularly like on the clock as aid, as a daily, it's 3 o'clock, time to do the bad
well,
thing, which was and wasn't
it depends on
always,
where you were, what type of slave you were. I mean, the
and
fun.
how hot you
Yeah.
were.
Well, it's not just that. It's that
Sorry,
there's
but
certain.
if you're a fat, ugly old,
Well, it wasn't
It
just
probably
that. There were
wasn't
the other
happening.
parts
Probably
too,
safe.
which is you had whole families of slaves that you had for generations. So it was not the same, for different things. But
No.
several of the famous philosophers, if I remember correctly, were slaves at one point.
Hmm.
And if there was the temporary slavery, there's permanent slavery, there's
Hmm.
slavery for being in debt, there's slavery for
I'm. I'm.
obligations, there's slavery because you were captured during war. And see,
Mhm.
everyone forgets about stuff like that. It's like, oh, okay, what did you do with your captives? You didn't let them go back. You
Mm.
conquered their lands. You had one of two choices: either you killed them or you turned them into slaves. You're
Right.
like, which one would you rather be?
And
Well,
Fat
yeah,
Merc, yeah, I'm well aware of that.
yeah, that's a, but that's the,
There's
but
more
again,
today than there's ever been in history.
yeah. Well, the other part is if anyone actually listens to Thomas Sowell, which group enslaved which group? It was always in groups, enslaved in groups. Uh, you know, who owned most of the British slaves? British. Who owned most of the African slaves? Africans. Who owned most of the Turkish slaves? Turks. It was the same. It was the same ethnic group. Uh, that's what people don't really want to hear about. But yeah, anyway, I'm just not referring to that. I'm talking.
Hey, what's happening, Bear? How you doing?
Um,
Just talking some Conan.
well, and when people say indentureship, it was still slavery if you
Sure.
actually look at it, because a slave you bought, an indentured servant was only good for as long as they're indentured to, however long they're indentured. So they would try working them to death if
Well, hopefully
possible.
they're good ones. They're
You know.
off grid.
Anyway,
Yeah, it's just it's part and parcel to so many eras of human history. But I always
it's
hope that if it's part of whatever game world that we're in, that the players will rise up and try to do the
sure.
at the very least the Underground Railroad thing, if not the full on conquest of the Planet of the Apes revolt, which
Well,
takes
let's
some pretty big cojones for the players to be willing to go against the system. But
well, let's go look at some other ones. What was Ben Hur?
when was it?
No, what was Ben Hur? If you
Ben
actually
Hur?
look at it,
Yeah,
is I mean, he was the prince and then he got turned into a slave, but then
sure.
he owned a couple of slaves along with the slave's daughter. And, there's just, it's a lot more complicated than people want to talk about, is the main point.
Well,
But at the end of the
yeah,
day, it
it's been kind of boiled down in the modern vernacular to be this thing that
plantation, it's
Mhm.
plantations. But if you actually look at Dark Sun, they had a whole book on a supplement for slavery.
Yeah, I've
And
got it right here.
yeah,
The Ivory Triangle, I think it is,
it
or
was
is it
actually, I think
Freedom?
it's yeah, it was one of them. It was actually pretty interesting, but it depends on how many you had. If you started noticing it as, if you were a political prisoner, then absolutely they're going to try to kill you. Uh,
You are Spartacus. Okay,
working, yeah.
from now on, Bear is not Bear. He's Spartacus.
Well, but I mean,
I thought reincarnation was a little too woo woo for you. It's definitely
no,
too woo woo for me. To me, that's like a living hell. I remember
but
in
that was
'69
the.
when.
But but the whole point of it really is that it's integral in stories. Look at what was going on with Edgar Rice Burroughs, where he was a slave. The main character was a slave several times. The same
Mhm.
thing with Conan. Conan was a slave several times. It gives you your characters a reason to become heroes and to go beyond what they were. They
Mhm.
don't sit
Yeah,
there
because like
crying. My family
so many
was a
people say,
slave.
I would have done this or that if I lived back then. Bullshit. You probably would have owned 12. You know, uh, and let's put your money where your mouth is. Roll up a character and let's see you try to disband or disrupt or free all of them in a game. A lot of times I've seen it when we played Dark Sun. Nobody gave two shits. I'm just like shaking my head, like you know,
Well, what
Perdiccas.
gets me about it is if you actually read Dark Sun, Dark Sun says that you're supposed to like raise an army. I'm like, where do you raise your army from? It's from all the slaves you're freeing. That's where you raise your army from.
And if you're just raising them to use them as cannon fodder, you're really freeing them, or are you freeing them in the most permanent sense possible?
Well, you know what? You are using them as cannon fodder, but you're also using. But how is that any different from being a free man and using them as cannon
Well,
fodder?
because if if you've got the manacles on, and the worst you got to do is scrub the toilets, that's way different than taking a sword to the belly and then being left to die on the battlefield.
Well, yes, but what I'm referring to is the fact that you free them from their shackles and like you can join me and we can fight for freedom. And when we take over this, you can live a better life. Okay, that's fine. 90% of you are going to die, but damn it, those 10% that live are going to
And somebody says, "But there's only 100 of us, sir."
well then you hope that you're one of those 10. it's well, I mean, if you look at what was the average Roman? The average Roman soldier, only half of them made it to retirement anyway. Um,
Hmm.
So it's
Well, retirement, if you read the fine print, meant that you got a casket and it was paid for by the state.
well, no, I mean, but if only half of them, well, for them it was 20 years. That was the whole point. You get 20 years, then you get some land. It's like, oh, okay, but only half of them made it through. Um, but no, but that's what always got me
I
is
will
when I
see you in the
started
morning, Huey.
is you started looking at the filers and stuff like that. It's like, man, that's what I want. I don't want to be a defiler. I mean, yeah, the problem is that when you're evil, it sounds really cool, but then you find out that it's not very heroic. You aren't that great. It's not the same. Yeah, okay, fine. It's
I have never heard of this. Batmerk, a thread of
oh, okay.
Bebenberg from the Last Kingdom was also a slave. Is it the Last Kingdom? Is that the name of the show?
So yeah, no, I mean there are always slave revolts because if you treat people poorly, they're going to revolt. But then there are other areas where
Well, who are we kidding? People are revolting to begin with.
um, well, those are the people you're hanging out with.
Present company of excluded, of course.
I don't care if people consider me revolting. I stopped caring when I turned 40. Yeah.
What's up, RPG Dad? I didn't know you were here.
No, it's I but so many of these things are just interesting. That's what whenever you're going through it, it's like, why do you want to do this? The other part is especially for Dark Sun. I thought the whole point was that you're supposed to, slowly be freeing the slaves, and you set up your own little encampment out in the middle of nowhere. And then when you get a large enough, and it comes in, then
See,
you raise
I
your
missed that.
thousands.
I must have
You
missed
raise,
that. I thought that the goal was to make the planet as much of a barren wasteland as possible, except your little fiefdom and everybody else. No, sorry, that's not it at all, is it?
only if you're Dragon King.
Mhm.
Actually, sometimes I love the ideas that were in there, but boy, but they started adding all the stuff that was going on in the books and in the modules, and then that was the meta plot, and I got tired of that. So,
Yeah, I've never read any novel by anybody even remotely related to TSR, except maybe Jack Vance, but not really.
well, Jack
Uh,
Vance, I don't think wrote for TSR.
no, but he was loosely affiliated with them in the early days.
So it's Fritz Lieber.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, it's but no, those are the games I want to play. Damn it, I want to play where we like raise it. Well, actually, kind of what my character's plan to do over time once it gets a couple more levels.
And
Um,
Cal is becoming an actual Dragon King.
well, that's good because you're going to die. That's, um,
We'll find out tomorrow, huh?
well, he's going to become an actual Dragon King.
Well, I don't know about
You gotta be a psionicist. You gotta be a psionicist and a magic user. Uh,
that. Sounds awesome when you think about it. That or a monk wizard.
there were some good ideas in there. How things actually play is very different. But for me, after dealing with my Monty Hall campaign, where characters were getting +6 weapons and all this other
Mhm.
stuff, and then suddenly go over and go like, guess what, guys? You get bone and steel. You get bone and stone weapons. It's like, okay. And actually, I kind of like the idea of broken things, but your stats are higher, and you start realizing maybe I don't want to fight everything. Maybe I'll just go walk around it. um, so, and then what I did like is that they had a lot of intelligent undead, and that that's what I thought was kind of cool. So I do like post-apocalyptic worlds that you can go explore, which makes sense.
Now I'm
Hey, the
really
final
looking forward to reading Mutant Crawl Classics, hoping that it will be my official uh, post
did I
apocalyptic.
send you? Did I send you a copy of that one?
You did once, and I still have it, but Squirrel sent me an actual hard copy of it,
Oh, cool. Okay.
and he
Okay.
sent me a hard copy of Dungeon Crawl Classics and the Dying Earth Kickstarter, which is all
Yeah, yeah.
same
The box
thing.
set.
So
Yeah.
so maybe that'll be the post apocalyptic game that I run. That'll be because Gamma World I love Gamma World, but it's every every single version of it has been incomplete or not even close to what I'm looking for when it comes to that. I
So
want something like a cross between Fallout and uh, Dying Earth
so yeah, if whenever we're done with our current campaign, as soon as you want to do the Mutant Call Classics, I'd like
on
to
the
join
calendar. I'm
that.
a laser shark. That's awesome.
Um,
Freaking lasers.
I the druids were actually pretty interesting for some of that. The problem is that you get a high enough level that it didn't make sense for you to like dual class. Um, but yeah, one thing I did like about Dark Sun is it says you are not an unknown, like 10th level character. Your name gets spread around the world. That was the whole idea for that. Um,
Yeah, that was something I kind of noticed in some of the games I was in. No matter what level you were a schlub because the GM just wasn't going to give you any recognition, any clout, unless you were specifically going down that specific railroad that led you to doing the things that they wanted you to do to tidy up their world. And I'm like, yeah, no thanks.
how do you get a psionicist if you're a venturer?
The Psionicist Druid would be kind of, I guess, if you did it through 2E or something, maybe.
Well, no, those were all 2E. The scientist was a 2E character.
Hmm.
Was character class. No, I just saw the X2 Venture Psionicist. I'm like, well, how do you get that? Because you can only use 4 build points. Um, but but yeah, it's but no. At the end of the day, though,
What
is
kind of potion are you brewing there, Batmer?
if you've got a combo character, guess what? Everyone can have their own. You know, there's some. Niche protection actually means a lot. Um,
Sure, sure.
and it and it is a game. It works well as a game to have niche protection. But the
Mhm.
other part is you just get henchmen. You just get more and more henchmen. That's why I always
Here's
like.
the thing. I was thinking about my ultimate, absolute favorite, like D&D combo because I really
Yeah,
like elves and half elves. Was the magic user assassin, and I realized why I liked that so much is because I liked also the Oriental Adventures ninja for the same reason is I like having the character with like the secret identity,
was that
where
even legal? Oh,
probably
dual
not.
class it was. Dual class it was, but not multi-class.
Yeah, I maybe unearthed.
No, because I think I'd have to go look, but I think only a couple of them are allowed to have assassin in it. I'll have to go look.
Yeah, yeah, half elf maybe.
I don't. Yeah, I thought that they only allowed like fighter cleric, magic user, and then um,
Maybe
yeah, I'll be honest. The illusionist thief I've liked a lot. Um,
because I
it,
did have
oh,
a split class human magic user assassin went to assassin 15th level and then became a magic user. Actually, no, well, he didn't do that. In Arduin, which we were using, there was an Arduin special ability that I rolled that made my character a magic user like 2 levels below his original class or his original whatever his level was. So he was a magic user 2 levels below his assassin level.
That's okay. I'm just listening to specific now I'm familiar with it. Is all right, Brian. Wait till he gets to 5th level and he gets 8 summoned mains, 4 summoned insect swarms, and 2 hellhounds. Uh, so for axes, you can summon creatures and they last for 24 hours. And so one of our characters, he he's a warlock, and so he summons like it's 3 levels higher than normal,
Oh,
and you
okay.
get 1 mains per level, and then he gets an insect swarm for every 2 levels, and he gets a hellhound for like every 6 levels. It's
Is specific nut in one of your games or
yeah,
vice
yeah,
versa? Oh, okay.
yeah. Okay, I wasn't familiar with it, but no, um, that's what he was as soon as he was mentioning that. But no, I mean, I like Axe for a lot of their stuff. I like playing it. I like, I got his Domains of War. We're gonna see what he does with his elves. Um, that's what he's referring to. But one of the characters is at 4th level, and this is what he can summon. And he's basically a 1 man army.
Hmm. Like Cal, like Gnarls.
Uh, no, like better
Hmm.
as he gets up in there. Well, some of it is that.
Cal's character is pretty powerful. Just saying.
Oh, I
What
know, I know. Um,
are you doing? What are you doing? You're acting like a weirdo. My dog.
That was the thing that I always wondered, is because it says clerics get this, but I'm not sure if druids or rangers are supposed to get bonuses for wisdom. Um,
I just house rule it.
oh, I know. Um, there's a lot of stuff that when
It's
you
not
start
going to
going through,
ruin the game if a druid gets a wisdom bonus.
yeah. Well, 1st level spells aren't that powerful.
Even
They're they're,
fifth, I
they're
don't care.
useful. What's that?
Even if his wisdom goes up high enough to get fifth level bonus spells, I'm okay with that. It's not gonna break the game. The game's already broken. We broke it like a year ago.
I know. At a certain point, it was just as soon as we're finished with that when we're done with that session or whatever, I like to do. If you can run the Mutant Call Classics, that'll be interesting. Um, I'm not even sure which.
Although I'm getting a game from Emperor's Choice and the people they're working
The
with
Arduin.
called Barrows and Borderlands.
Oh, okay.
Been out for a while. It's like a BX style Gamma World, but
Yeah.
with magic and psionics and mutations, like really, really gonzo, dying Earth kind of stuff, but different. That
Uh huh.
looks very, very interesting, and I will be getting it. As a matter of fact, I'll be having the designer on the show in a couple of weeks to talk about it. And if it's better or just as interesting or whatever, that might be the one.
Well, like most things, is you don't know what it is until you start playing it.
Yes, yes.
Except Ariel, mini Warmut. Uh,
Is Mini Warmut in the chat?
says no one's more powerful than Thundar, and my answer was except Ariel.
Okay. Daniel can fill up a whole room with summoned creatures controlling the entire area at all times. Okay.
Well,
That's
he's
cool.
he's letting you all know that it's
Oh, hey,
I'm
what's up, Mini Warmut? You are in the chat.
yeah.
What's happening, man? I a little sneak preview for you, Mini Warbot. It's the demon I've been working on. Oop, where's the camera? It's way over there. Rawr. This will be my centerpiece for your September challenge. I'm not going to have as many minis as I hope to have done. Probably about 30, but 30 in a month, that's not bad when you consider that one's part of the pile.
Hey, I'm just lucky if you get one done.
Yeah, well, you're not really a painter much anymore these days.
I was never a painter. I was a player. I would sometimes paint. That's um,
I didn't know Bear was working on one and then dropped it. I know he dropped. Was it him that dropped Bastard Sword or gave it to Mr. Max, who I haven't seen in a while?
So, but no, I always like. Don't get me wrong, I love seeing that stuff. It's just I don't have any more room.
Thanks, Mini Warma. What did I do this time, Cal?
He's referring to how nice the mini
Oh,
look.
oh, thank you. I've been doing a lot of work on it and trying a lot of OSL. I'm trying to make his chest because he's like I'm trying to make it look like he's standing on lava, and then his chest it's got some clear plastic in it to look like fire, and his back it's got clear fire plastic.
Yeah.
Trying to make him look lit up
You know
from
what though?
OSL.
That clear plastic actually ruins the mini.
Yeah, I like it back here because it gives it that kind of sort of Godzilla toy. Jackie had a lot of Godzilla toys that
Yeah.
had that stuff, so it brings back memories. But it doesn't look like fire. It really doesn't.
Like I said, is it seems to ruin the mini, unfortunately, because the painting is so much better, and then you get that, and it's just maybe if it was lit,
Thanks.
if there was some kind of lighting behind it.
I really thought about running an LED through here and through the up through the chest and stuff, but it was like if I did, I would have had to have waited about 2 extra weeks to do that. I really just wanted to freaking paint that thing. So I can get another one. It's only, it's only
Well, like I
money.
said, it's the back. Well, to be fair, it's not like you can't paint
Thanks.
over it if you wanted to, but yeah, the painting looks so much better
Thanks.
than the cheap plastic.
I really don't consider myself but an adequate painter. But Jackie, he's the artist. Oh my God, he was painting fire that looks more like fire than anything I've ever done at the age of like 12 and 13. I'm like, but he's a graphic artist now and does some really great stuff. You guys should go check out his channel. I default to painting. You're a very good painter, Cal. Bo's also another great painter, but Bo's a little a little too intense when it comes to the like the techniques and things that he will do. I just don't have the time for like I mean I have been layering on this, but starting skin out with like a red and then doing no, I'm not doing that. I've got 82 different bottles of flesh colored paint. For Christ's sake, I'm just gonna slap one of those on it like this Conan here. What do you want? I have nothing. I have nothing for you but scorn and pity, and I am all out of pity. This Conan miniature, it's an old heritage. All that
Yeah.
is Crusader flesh. It's a speed paint over a white primer. That's it. And it came out freaking pretty good. I'm calling this one done except the base.
See,
And
this is what you have to do: is you have to say how far do you have to be for it to look good.
I'm looking at
That's
it
the
at
same way we do for roller compacted concrete.
two
Some of
two
them,
feet. 2
some of
feet
them
it
are
looks great.
some of them
Up
are 50
close, maybe
yards.
not.
Some of them are half a mile. You know, so,
Cal, be careful because uh it's a monster of a mini, and there's some crazy things like his wings. He's got these chains hanging off his wings that are
oh, you
painted.
haven't put the wings on him yet? All
No,
right.
I'm gonna either magnetize them or just use poster putty and
Okay,
make
you're
it a
gonna have to move
temper.
it back, and you're gonna have to move it towards your right. There you go.
Okay, let me
There you go.
because these wings are so massive that this thing is just asking to get broken. You know what I mean? Once I glue them in, so I'm just gonna make it so that they
Or
come out. I haven't even
you could,
put his weapon on because again, it's the kind of thing that will break off. Uh, if I move it or drop it. I live in earthquake. I live on top of like the
Fault.
San Andreas Fault. I live right on it, so
I mean, if you're looking at, boy, I'm not sure what type of magnets you use. I was using N52, and a lot of people like rare earth magnets. They're using like N42s or whatever. I was like, no, I was getting the best I could. Um,
Vampire's Crypt. I want to know more. Tell me more.
show it off tomorrow.
Yeah, yeah, or throw it on in my Discord or on Facebook, and I'll see it.
Yeah, exactly. I agree with Mini Mutt there.
I would be happy with that. Move on to the next mini. Thanks. I have some more little things to do with it on the weapon because it's got a sword that also has some clear plastic flames that I haven't attached yet. Uh, or he's got this ridiculous, just comical freaking whip that circles around him.
Oh,
He's
that
like
is
holding it
nice.
like,
Oh man.
I mean, tell me that's not going to just, you look at it wrong, it's going to snap. You know, it looks badass,
Yeah, that's
but
definitely.
that's magnet, and maybe I'll put it on there for a little while, then take it off, put the sword in. But I don't know. I am not a perfectionist. Uh, I just I want it to look good, and um, it's a when it comes to like the bigger pieces, I'll spend way more time on them because I know people are going to look at them more. I've got or
Well,
a
they're
character model.
centerpieces. Well, they're
Yeah.
centerpiece models. Centerpiece models need to have that, but which is
Oh,
why
you're in Long Beach, dude? Long Beach, California?
is
I'm
what an
in
hour away from
I'm
you.
in Palmdale.
Okay.
Yeah, I know. I used to not hang out in Long Beach. I mean, I've hung out in Long Beach a couple of times, but I saw my first concert, Long Beach Arena, which was Rush, and Golden Earring opened for them, and Golden Earring blew them away. Just saying. It looks great. Move on, pal. Okay, okay.
No,
Uh,
I mean that's kind of my view on that is because otherwise you'll spend far more time and you can
well,
always come back and do it.
when Bo says it looks good, I'll be like, okay.
Well, we
Move
know when
on.
Bo says it looks good, you spent 1,200 hours on it, and you're like, I could have painted all these other minis. um, oh wow,
That's nice, Cal. That's nice. I want to see this vampire thing. Bellflower. So do you remember, or am I thinking? Wasn't there a store like the Dragon's Lair or something up by that area? It was a long time ago. I'm almost 60. Uh, I think it was right there, like on PCH almost. I remember because I could take like one bus all the way up and hit it, grab some stuff, and then come back when I was a kid. Retirement sale, nice.
well he's saying that it's going out of sale for that bigger store.
Right.
So, and you know, a lot of times I want to get stuff. I'm like, I just want something I can just put on the board without messing with it. Um, but reminds me, I need to find out. Sometime next month, I'm going to go see Alice Cooper in concert. So,
That's got to be interesting.
which
Yeah, what was the last concert I went to? I think it was Rush, Roll the Bones. No, no,
Ramstein.
no, no, no. No, it was Bloister Cult right here, uh, about about 500, 800 yards from my house.
Oh,
Was
that's nice.
work, and they played. That was the last concert I saw with Jackie. He was 3 years old, so my last concert I saw, and his first concert was my favorite band, greatest band in the galaxy, Bloister Cult.
Um,
Come at me, bro.
you mean Windrose? No, just, I gotta
Sorry,
have my dwarf. I have to have my dwarven metal. Um, but no, I think the last one I went to was either Ramstein or
I would love to see them.
what was the other? What was Eric Clapton? It was one of those two.
I would not love to see him.
It was funny because he was only in the U.S. for like 14 days. That was it, and he only went to places in the South because everyone else was closed for COVID.
Hmm.
But
Dude, this was back in the '80s, so I don't know how old you are, Bat Merc, but I'm 58. And I could have the name wrong and the location wrong. I just remember I was able to take a single bus, and mind you, it was like an hour plus a ride up there. Oyster Culture in the
you know
original
what,
Klingon.
Kobe? That's absolutely true about golf. But I don't know. I mean, it was them and who was the other one? It was and Judas Priest. So those are the two that are going to be playing next month.
Golf, huh? He's a big golf guy.
Oh yeah, he ran for governor of Arizona, if I remember correctly.
Really, I thought he was from the Midwest.
I think he retired in Arizona, but
I thought of that too, but until they get their stuff situated. Oh, anymore, bud. Seriously. Hey, I'm not the oldest guy here. Just saying. Yeah, Squirrel. Yeah, I don't think I will go to any more concerts. I don't like. Not that I'm doing anything illegal, but I don't like the whole metal detector, empty your pockets, kind of mentality. We went to a thing today, and it was just a eat, literally just to go eat, and you had to go through this big long rigmarole. Ladies having to dump out their purses, metal detector, wand, the whole bit, everything but a freaking cavity search. Not only that, but it was a cashless thing, you know. So again, no. What do you mean cashless? I can't. Everything is on my card. No, it's not. I'm not doing that. Um,
so I know that a lot of them are doing the little surcharge if you use your credit card.
hmm
So, well, they used to not charge it, but I was like, okay, but
yeah, and we were talking about that. I think it was last night. I used to love. That was one of the things I loved about traveling was, I would take my at first it was a cassette Walkman, then a CD Walkman, and a crap ton of CDs, and just listen to good music and read a couple of good books. Yeah,
I'll be honest, I don't even really like going to concerts. I just do it to get out of the house every so often.
yeah. Well, it would depend on the concert, I guess. And I don't
I went
want
to
to
the
be
Megadeth
partying. Let's
concert.
say, you know.
I went to the Megadeth concert, and it's so funny because people were trying to act like they were in their 20s, and then everyone's in their 50s. Like, no, man, we're gonna like break a bone
There's
if we
no
do
mosh
this.
pit. No mosh pit.
No,
You can't, Grandpa. You can't bring your walker into the mosh pit.
yeah,
Sorry.
that's,
Yeah. I mean,
it was funny because everyone's like looking at this guy. One of the guys was trying to do a mosh pit, and we're just like looking like, what the hell are you doing? We're too old for this crap. Um,
back in Cal's day, they carried around their phonograph. The old Victrola. Just put it on your dog's back. Yeah. I'm not. I don't party anymore, and I don't. I was. I forget. Oh no, I was at that thing today, and as I was walking away to not go to it, just the reek of weed was just like overwhelming. So let me get this right. No cash. Um, I can't bring my pocket knife in, but these people could be freaking smoking a big old fatty right inside the gates. And here comes my 17-year-old kid who I don't want exposed to that shit. Yeah.
Well, your kid's like mine. I'm not too worried about him doing drugs. So that's, my son won't
Well,
even touch
make it
alcohol.
quick, guys, because our favorite bands are dropping like flies.
Well,
Um,
that's because they're all like 80 now.
or older. I know. I know.
I mean, Eric Clapton, I think, is like 80 years
I
old.
wanted to see. I might still go, but just because I know it'll be really chill. Boz Scaggs is still performing. The guy's like 108. You know. Um, no, he's not, but he's still performing, and he still sounds great. So
I mean, let's see. What was the just? I mean, let's see. So Alice Cooper 77. Let's see what the old Judas Priest is here.
Rob Halford. I'm guessing Rob Halford's about 80.
You know.
No worries, off grid. I'm actually gonna call it quits in a bit here, so I'm running out of water, and uh, I've got church in the morning.
Yeah, 74. I mean, it's
Oh, Halford's 74.
yeah.
Okay,
I
that's
mean,
not.
that's why I'm laughing about all these things. Is they're all of like my parents' age. So, and I had to laugh because I went to go see Eric Clapton, and my mother remembers seeing him in concert. You know, went in
You
the
know,
70s.
weird thing though, like I remember, like my dad didn't make it to but 44,
Yeah.
and I'm 58, and I look younger than my dad that did when he passed away. Um, certain, there must have been something added to our food or something, because I look at people and remember people from back when I was a kid and when they were like my age, and they looked way different and behaved differently than we do. I don't know, maybe it was the uh,
Well, you never
just
met my grandfather. That was, no,
I never met mine either. No, I did, but they both passed away when I was like 10. So
well, my grandfather and grandmother used to complain about people in their 50s acting old, and my grandparents were older than they were. And it was like in their 60s and 70s. It was. Um,
yeah,
so
only a few years left.
you know, um, but no, a lot of it is just remaining active, and then we also, to be fair, we're also not like beaten down like our, some of those generations were of just like
Mhm.
hard labor. Um,
Yeah,
now I know your parents were a special case, but I mean, um,
right.
but some of those people, man, they were just beaten. Like, you know, the fact they made it
Depression
in.
era, things like that. Depression and wars.
Oh yeah. Well, I
It
knew both
does.
my grandpa. Well, one of my
Take
biological
care, off
grandpa.
grid.
I did.
We'll see you tomorrow. Hopefully you'll feel better, and enjoy church tomorrow. I'm looking forward to it. I actually missed church last weekend, and that bummed me out because family decided on the day before to go out of town, and I'm like, but, anyways,
Don't you realize that the exorcism can't continue if he doesn't show up? I
yeah,
mean, I mean, what kind of exorcism do you have if you don't bring the demon?
yeah, that's what Jackie keeps saying, and I'm like, that's hereditary, right? It's like, what? The curse is hereditary.
Well, you're a teenager and you're possessed until you at least turn 40, right?
That I don't feel my age at all. I still think about doing crazy crap that I guess I've done all my life, but it's like, hey, wait a minute, I'm almost freaking 60. and maybe it's his hobby, or maybe I've just been lucky or whatever. But
You know what? Some of it is, as I look at it,
it's got to be all the preservatives, right?
as I was looking at certain, like I had a friend of mine when I was going, because I was like 10 plus years older than my college classmates, and they're like, "Man, when you turn 30, you can't play video games. You can't do this. You can't do that." I was like, "What the hell are you talking about?" I said, "I still do that. I'm 35 or 34 at the time or whatever." He's like, "What? Really?" I'm like, "Yes, dude, you can do it. You just have to balance things out."
I mean, you're in charge of your own money, right? You should also be in charge of your own time.
Well, I think some of it just came down to is you
Aren't
can't.
we all, Cal? Yeah, I still feel between 14, 17, and 21 tops.
No, I don't feel that poor. So I can now
Or
afford all
no,
the
no,
games
no.
I'm playing.
No, maybe not. Maybe no. I meant everything else. Money wise, yeah.
I know. I'm just.
Even at 21, I was I was a broke mother.
I mean, I'm looking at it like 2 or 3% of my income, my gross income, goes to RPGs per year. So
Those are rookie numbers. Well, it
I
depends
don't
on.
know. I don't know if I start looking at stuff. Well, of course I know that you do like the trading, but I look at stuff like if you look at like how many Kickstarters I back and how many RPGs come in and how many books are coming in. I was like, oh, okay. But I get a lot more new stuff. But it's like, oh, okay. But I've got, and I will say as much as people complain about, man, we do have some good games that are coming out. And if the writers would just keep their mouths shut and stay
Right?
out
I
of
mean,
politics, they
well,
would do so much better.
not just those things, but also not do what you not throw it in our face with the art as well. You
I,
know,
well, and I'll be honest.
you have
If
to
you
admit
really,
there have been some companies that have gone out of their way to let us know what they're thinking by what they put in the way of artwork, and I don't want to see it.
well, again, here's what I look at is I don't care if that's the demographic you're going for, but what gets me
Mhm.
about it is stop complaining that no one buys your crap when you're trying to piss on the demographic that actually buys your products.
Oh, here's a crazy thought. Why not just make a product that's in a bubble that has nothing to do with all those things? Just make something that's true to itself and not uh,
Well,
dependent on
again,
a particular
it,
demographic.
it's
All
it's
the stuff
it's
prior to 2000 didn't have any of that going on.
well. Here's what it comes to. Well, I'm not saying it always has some stuff going on, but I mean, but my whole point is that's fine if you're aiming for the demographic, but don't crap on the demographic that you're trying to go for. Like if you're gonna, that's again, if you're making thirsty sword lesbians, I know which demographic you're going for. That's fine. You could, make it for
It's
them.
like me.
but but no, it's one of these things like, okay, that's fine. But when I start looking at what was it, I had to find if was it Coyote and Crow, and you're just like, it just sounds like it's bad writing, like really bad writing. And then I think they did $1 million in Kickstarter, and then they made almost no money off of it. Like this is just bad business.
Well, because all the money went to puberty blockers and Kool Aid for the hair.
Sensitivity readers, and it was like
You've got to be kidding me. I
my
am
whole
not
point.
paying for somebody's college degree when I finally go off and write my great American novel and or freaking RPG.
Well, no,
No,
no, but no, no. My point is that that's where your money went because you didn't spend it wisely. That's what I'm trying to say is, you should have
my
been.
money's going where it belongs, where every good game designer's money should go,
I
and
mean, into the game and into
hookers
your
and blow,
pocket, into your pocket. So, oh
hookers
no,
and
no,
blow.
that's Hollywood numbers. That's when you get to Hollywood. Until you get to Hollywood, it's not
Thanks,
hookers
Minnie
and blow.
Warmite. I'm I'm a reincarnated Texan. Let's just say that.
Now that the hook,
Now, Cali used to be awesome. Not gonna lie, I used to surf. I, uh, did a lot of garage, band stuff, and and then somewhere down the road, I think it was, honestly, when I moved to Virginia and came back, I could feel like a disturbance in the force.
I remember being in Long Beach, and
I got a lot of friends in Arizona, and Arizona, I love the desert. I love the beach, but I also love the desert. So I think California, would have been great, but now it's not. So Texas is the next best thing. Plus Texas and open carry, no state taxes.
I
You
will
know,
say this much, just to warn you, is we do have high property taxes. So
I what?
high property taxes.
Oh,
So just be aware of that. This is why I. This is
you are, Cal. You are.
well. This is why I was trying to. Well, you know what? Is I
Good
homeschooling.
for you, Badmer.
Homeschooling is pretty easy. I don't know why everyone makes it out to be like this really hard thing to do. Like, you know what's really hard is you have to be self-disciplined if you want to homeschool your child. Stop expecting your
Hey,
child
hey,
to be
hey,
self-disciplined.
I've been retired since before Jackie
Yeah,
was born. So I was here, and I consider myself having done a lot of that. I mean, K through 8, uh, we still had a lot of time
sure.
together for him to learn stuff from me. He doesn't realize it anymore, but he did. And I would teach him stuff on the way to school. I would teach him stuff on the way home. I would teach him stuff when we were here, goofing off, before the next school night, on the weekends and stuff. And look how he turned out. He's almost straight A student, major JROTC on the school newspaper, learning 2 musical instruments, and the youngest professional contributor to a role playing game. I'm gonna call that wins. The teenage angst and know it all attitude, that just, I guess, comes with the territory.
So
Well, maybe I just won't buy any property in Texas. I'll just rent, and just sock all that extra cash away, or dump it into uh, more games and more books.
but uh, but no, I. It's most of these things are not that hard to do for
Mhm.
stuff, but um, well, and people say the property taxes are crazy. Depends on what you're doing and how much you're spending for your house. There are ways of doing it. If you're a disabled veteran, which is why I was trying to get my father to do stuff, it's like he doesn't have to pay property taxes. Um, there's things like that. But it depends on where you buy them. Texas used to be really cheap for housing, so the property taxes were not that bad. But man, if you go to places like Austin and a few others, they are terrible. And of course, a lot of the house prices doubled, so that really hurt.
Mhm. But if you're not paying state taxes and you don't have, $6 a gallon gas, um, the property tax might just, you know, be about the same as now um, here in
Well, a
California.
lot of it is well, no, well, in California is really expensive. The problem that we had here during COVID is a lot of people moved out of California and trying to not get hit with the capital gains tax. So when they did the capital gains, whatever they sold their house for in California is what they bought here, and that just jacked the price up. But we'll see. They've been talking about the price being going down by 20%. The bubble has somewhat gone down, but land has gotten man. Land was pretty steady for a good 10 to 15 years, and then it just tripled. It was just, God. Well, I'll say this much: is this is the first
Wow,
year
that is a
rent
lot.
did not go up. This is the first year my
That is
rent
a
did
lot,
not,
Pat Merck.
and on average, my rent was going up $100 a month post COVID, so or $100 a year.
Thanks, Pat Merck.
COVID. So, um, but yeah, it's not that hard. All I can say is when I hear people like, "Well, you don't have the influence on your kid," I'm like, "Yes, you do. If you're in your kid's life more often, but if you
Hmm.
just expect them to leave them alone, you don't have that much influence." And really, you're setting the ground before early on. Um, you know, my my son is my friend while he's still my son, but he still knows who's in charge. That's the big issue. Too many people want to be their children's friends. And I told my son, I don't care if you like me or not. My only goal is to have a functional adult by 18.
And an empty room by the time he's 18.
Well,
Point
that's
one
that's
day.
just between him. No, actually, I told him he could live with me for free
Yeah.
as long as he's willing to work 50 hours a week. And people are like 50 hours. I'm like, yeah, I want him to get that work ethic in. If he gets that work ethic in, I don't have to worry about him.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, we'll see. Things seem
I
to.
totally get it, Mini Warmud. Yeah, I would. I, I I know the feeling. It's just a little bit different. I'm sure you can imagine what I'm talking about.
But well, we'll find out. It's so yeah. Well, there's just a lot of stuff out there, but anyway, I think that you're about ready to go. I'm getting kind of
Yeah,
tired.
yeah. I'm starting to fade, and I'm
Me too.
totally out of water. But thanks everybody. This was fun talking about Conan, at least for the first half of the show.
That's
Met
normal.
some nice new people. Batmerk, try and find me, or come check. Leave a comment so we can start communicating. I really like to see your work. Mini Warmut, I will be posting pictures by the end of the month for your challenge. And for you painters out there, Mini Warmut's got, what is this, your third annual painting challenge? He does one in September. Paint as many miniatures as you can in September. Take pictures of them or make a video, send them to him, and then he'll highlight them in the show. Squirrel, are you doing that too? Are you doing the September challenge? If not, I understand. Squirrel's the hardest working guy we know, and by hard work, I mean freaking crazy. One of these days, you got to come back on and explain in better words than I can. But he busts some ass, keeping this great country of ours, still chugging along. Everybody out there, have a great rest of your weekend. I'm actually still going to record a Conan video tonight for tomorrow morning. It's going to be Red Nails because I haven't finished the other story that comes before Red Nails, which is weird.
Isn't
But
Red
then
Nails pretty long one?
it's pretty long. It's like a couple. It's about 100 pages, and the Creature of the Black Pool or something like that. I started reading, but I'd already read Red Nails earlier
Sure.
this month, so I'll just do it from memory.
Well, that's when you can tell Red Nails is when he got
Okay,
in.
thanks, Pat Merck. That way I can sub to your channel and see what you
He
got
got
going on.
he got
Everybody,
into the whole. He really got into his stride right about there, and that was printed what, a month after he died. I mean,
mm-hmm.
it's just like you're just like, dude, I know you're depressed or whatever. Just give yourself 6 months, and
I think there must have been something that we
well, of
can't
course.
understand going on.
Well, a lot of writers seem to be bipolar or something like that. And
Well, I
so,
think there was also an issue with a woman that he was interested in at the same time, leaving him or marrying his best friend or something. And, I could see that, 1-2 punch. Okay, fine. I,
well, that's what I
I,
mean is give yourself 6 months. Jeez.
God, can you imagine? He would have been rolling in dough.
I'm not saying he would be rolling in dough, but he would have set himself up to be. Um, Here's the sad part: all these writers that were in there that would have done really well if they had just come. Like, of course, they laid the groundwork. 40, 50 years later, they would be going to conventions and they'd be, signing books, and they'd be doing so much better. And there just wasn't a market other than like we say with the pulp, where you you didn't even have your own copyright. You just wrote, you handed it off to them, and they kept the copyright. And so that's just what sent off. So, but you were paid. That wasn't like hey, here's a royalty. Good luck.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, something like I said, it was a 1-2 punch thing, and you know, but who knows if he had lived longer, he might have been a douchebag. Don't know.
Well, who cares? I don't really care on what they're if they're a douchebag or not. Just write good work, damn it, and shut the hell up. That's Stephen King. Guess what? You got hit by a car, and then you became all weird after that. Well, you were kind of weird before then, but then you became like really, the
Weird.
same thing happened to what was his name? Um,
Gene Koontz.
no, Roger Ebert or whatever. Remember, as soon as he got cancer, all of a sudden, all the movies he was watching and everything else, he became super weird
Yeah,
about, oh, this is too violent. I'm like, you used to love horror movies and violent films.
yeah. My dad went to school like closely with one of those two guys. I forget which one. He said he was a turd back then too. So, all right, folks. I will see you guys tomorrow. Holman,
Okay.
be ready for a game. Everybody else, have a great weekend, and I will see you guys tomorrow or the next day.
All right. Have a good night. Bye.